Hello, everyone. You're all very welcome to our LinkedIn audio event. We're so happy to have you here live with us. The audio is also going to be streaming on our YouTube, so if you need to step away or if you miss any parts of this, it's going to be available to listen back to on the YouTube channel too. We also have a chat happening on both, and we would love to hear from you. So if you have any questions or feedback, just pop it in the chat as we go along, and we're going to get to it at the end. So my name is Megan, and I'm here with Gary.
Hi, everyone.
And we're both from Amplify. We help engage and energize your people through our reward and recognition programs while reducing HR admin and ensuring budget and tax compliance. And because of that, employee engagement is something that we're always thinking about. It's about getting the best out of your people. So today, we'd like to talk to you about some key insights that are a must in boosting employee engagement. So let's get started. The 3 key points that we're covering are: what is employee engagement and why does it matter? 2, how do you measure employee engagement? And 3, what things can you do to improve your employee engagement? And of course, we're going to take questions at the end. So if you have anything as we go along, just pop them in the chat. So Gary, when we talk about employee engagement, what do we actually mean?
Okay, well, employee engagement, there isn't one definition and there isn't even one measure of employee engagement. And therefore, it's something that everyone in HR talks about and has an opinion about and wants to strive for, but it's not something that is universally definable. Through all the research that we've looked at and that we've used and conducted ourselves in the past, the definition that I prefer to use for employee engagement is simply that employee engagement is the willingness to give discretionary effort to the job. So that's it. It's somebody that's so motivated and aligned with the company's goals and visions and values that they're willing to put in that extra effort without being asked. So it's discretionary. And if you can obviously get that throughout your organization, or if you can even just turn the dial on employee engagement and get more people of the mindset that they're willing to give discretionary effort to what the company is trying to achieve, well, it goes without saying you're going to have a more successful company, you're going to have more productivity, you're going to do better. And all the stats will point that out as well.
So would you say that employee engagement is kind of the same as employee satisfaction?
No, and I think it's often confused with employee satisfaction. Okay. So employee satisfaction might be part of it, because if you're engaged and giving discretionary effort, you're probably going to be more satisfied in your role than other people who are not as engaged. But it isn't employee satisfaction. It isn't the same thing. It's about being motivated to do good work and becoming energized when a goal is achieved, when a goal that's furthering the objectives of the company is achieved. So it's much more than just being happy in your job. You can be happy in your job, but you can be not really contributing enough or as much as a company or a manager might like. So engagement is a lot more than that, and it's a lot more important and a lot more valuable than that.
Okay, so we know about what employee engagement is, but why does it matter?
Well, like I said, it's intuitively, I think HR people understand that engaged employees are better for a company's performance, and that's borne out by the absolutely hundreds of studies and stats that you can find online and that are conducted every year through massive global and local employee surveys and studies. And just to give you some of the top line figures, this isn't coming from me, this is coming from the wealth of research that's out there. If you can increase employee engagement in your company, it can do things like reduce the turnover of staff by up to 30%. It can decrease the turnover of staff by 30%. It can decrease absenteeism by up to 80%. It can increase productivity by 18%. and it can increase profitability in a company by 23%. And if you take all of that together, what we've seen is that if you are able to achieve higher engagement in your company, there's a gain of 10,000 euros per employee per year that a company can benefit from in terms of reduction in turnover, increased productivity, less absenteeism, and just more productivity because people are there more engaged with the work. So 10,000 euros per employee per year is a huge saving or a huge gain that you can make through your staff. And that's the figure people should keep in mind as we go through this. So it's worth investing in, but it's not always top of mind when it comes to how do we invest in our people in order to make the company more productive, more profitable, whatever it might be. Those figures, that type of return is not always what is at the top of leadership's priorities and leadership's consciousness. But just to quote one famous, I guess, CEO from the past, Jack Welch of General Electric, he did a lot of innovative things. When it came to people, the one thing that sticks out in my mind that he said was, it goes without saying that no company, small or large, can win over the long run without energized employees who believe in the mission and understand how to achieve it. And so what he's saying there is you need engaged employees in order for your company to be successful in the long run. And he obviously was in charge of a very successful company over a very long period of time. So that's, on that score, I think he probably knew what he was talking about.
Yeah, for sure. So we hear a lot about company or corporate values as well. Where do you think that the values come into this? Like, how do values relate to employee engagement, do you think?
In my opinion, a company values, a lot of the time, company values are something that is sort of aspirational. There was an exercise done once, and values were generated from that through some sort of process, and then they were sort of put away in a drawer, or they put up on the website as a sort of a marketing thing, but are never really embraced. But if used properly, values can connect company goals with employee effort. They can be the thing that sort of aligns employees with the company in a really powerful way. And as we go through today, we'll see that using company values to drive engagement is a really good way to go. Especially when you consider that only 30%, they reckon only 30% of employees are actively engaged at work. So it's this relatively small number of people relative to the size of your organization, big or small. 1 in 3, it could even be 1 in 5, depending on what you read. So most people are coming into a company on a daily basis. They're doing an okay job. They're putting in the hours. They're doing the tasks. They're leaving in the evening time. You get some people, a very small percentage, who are actively not contributing, actually becoming negative in terms of moving the company forward. And then you have this cohort of maybe 20%, 25, 30% max of employees who are actively engaged. They get it. They want to drive themselves and the company forward. They feel aligned with the company. And that to me says that they share the same values and they're willing to put in that discretionary effort in order to drive the thing forward. And that's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to get more people to be in that category, even by a percentage or two. That will make a huge difference.
Yeah, we actually have we have a lot of companies that have really strongly embedded values here as well. A great example of one company that we work with, they launched last year, Curm Care. Curm Community is the program. They're a group of care homes and they're spread across Ireland. Their values are caring, united, respectful, adaptable, and meaningful. So if you want to see a company where values are really important, it's Curm. It's so much more than just like caring for the elderly. Their values are really integral to their employee engagement, I find.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they're working in the care home sector, and that's a sector that has traditionally been associated with a high level of staff turnover, but crucially as well, if you think about what the jobs that they're doing, the majority of their staff are doing, is they're caring for your grandparents, my grandparents, you know, who are at that stage in their life and need that care in a care home. So not only from a business point of view is it crucial that, you know, that people are recognized and that turnover is kept to a minimum in order for there to be enough staff to provide the service. But I think even more than that, it's not just enough in a care home setting to do the job, to come in and, you know, do the bare minimum, you know, feed, clothe, make sure these people get to bed. You want, or you hope in that scenario that the values that they have of caring, respectful, adaptable, meaningful, that those values are how these employees are going about their daily tasks, because they're dealing with your loved ones and my loved ones. So it's really important that they have these values that the employees share and believe in and engage with and are aligned with. And that's why I think Coram is a great example of a company that said, look, we need to put a program in place to ensure that our staff are aligned with our values and that our staff are recognized for living those values on a daily basis, because it's so important and it's so core to what we do.
Yeah, I agree. So we've covered what employee engagement is and why it's important. So moving on, but actually, if you do want to know more about Amplify or how we can help you boost employee engagement, you can actually just send a DM here on LinkedIn to Gary or myself. You can pop us an email. We'd love to give you a free demo of the Amplify Recognition Hub. We can show you how our software can help simplify steps for you to make your employee engagement better. So part 2 of our talk today is how do you measure employee engagement? So measuring engagement, that can be kind of a tough thing to get a handle on. How exactly have you seen companies measure employee engagement?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that most companies don't measure employee engagement. And, you know, that's understandable enough, because there isn't a universal measurement for engagement. You sort of have to go and figure it out yourself, and it really, your engagement in your company is relative to how it was before, whether it's increasing or decreasing, more so that it's probably relevant to other companies, even in your own sector. And so not many companies come to us and say, we have very low engagement scores and we want to increase those. That's not typically what happens. Well, I'll come back to that in a second. Why do companies come to Amplify and ask about employee or peer recognition? But just to answer the question about measurement, there are ways to measure, and most of those are to do with surveys, employee surveys, annual surveys, or pulse surveys, in which, you know, you're asking a series of questions of employees anonymously, normally across the entire organization, and normally one or two of those questions touch on engagement, either directly or indirectly, and you can then over time build up a picture of where engagement is at in your organization, and how that correlates to maybe some of the other measures that companies use for engagement. And what I mean by that is they're looking at their staff turnover rate, they're looking at employee productivity, they're looking at other indicators like that, hard measures, absenteeism rate, to see if these are increasing or decreasing, and how do they correlate to what employees are saying in their annual or pulse surveys. And there's actually some surveys, some methodology around surveys, if you really want to go to a more deeper level of employee engagement measurement. And there's a model that called Say, Stay, Strive, in which you're asking a series of questions which have the intent of exposing whether your employees are saying positive things about the organization, so acting as advocates, whether they are intending or saying that they're going to stay with the organization for a long time, and whether they are striving or motivated to give their best. So questions around those three elements combined together can give you a pretty good measure of where engagement is at overall in your company. So that's quite a good method I find in surveys of trying to get a dedicated engagement score. But again, you've got to measure that then over time and see what it's doing in your organization. And if it's going down, there's something to address. If it's going up, you're obviously doing something right.
Yeah. There are lots of different ways to measure, but as you said, surveys are a really good one, because we've had a few companies call us after they've done an internal survey Employees reporting feeling unappreciated or unrecognized is kind of one of the biggest metrics that we see when they come in. One reason that we do notice, especially lately, is disconnect. A lot of companies don't have the traditional office setup that you see on shows like The Office. There's a lot of people working shift work, working remotely or hybrid as well. For instance, one of our big clients is a large security company. Most of their management team actually works up in an office away from the staff on the floor or out in the yard working. They're out on location during the shift and often at different times because they're not, sometimes people work nights, sometimes people work afternoon shifts. So with them, we worked on ways to bridge this disconnect so that employees have their moment to be seen for going the extra mile, and management have a chance to give them their kudos so they can see what other people are congratulating them for. It's kind of, yeah, it's a good way to try to bridge that disconnect.
Yeah, and I think that they have an extreme example of that because the management are in a different location with all of the workers, you know, which is a little bit weird. But in fact, you know, that's in the whole discussion about hybrid working, I think it gets lost sometimes, like whether it's more productive or less productive, or whether it's a benefit or whether it's the future. It's here to stay. But what I see is that when it comes to hybrid working, it makes the job of managers more difficult, particularly when it comes to the whole area of recognition and motivation and that one-to-one feedback that used to come way easier, way more naturally when everybody every day was in the same place. Now with hybrid, there are situations where you can barely see some people from one week to the other because of holidays and hybrid work when they're at home. If you don't have a single day in the week, and even if you do have one day when all the company's there, you might meet everybody. So there's all of these touch points that are missing. And my point here is that it has made the job of management, proper people management, and especially in terms of engaging with your team, it has made it more difficult. I don't think there's a debate about that, but it's not really discussed a huge amount. But we certainly see it in the type of services that we provide when, for example, we are able to get the whole organization onto a dedicated employee recognition or peer recognition app. And then they all go around and you can see what's going on in the company. You can see, whether you're in the office or out of the office. You can see who's getting recognized for doing what. You can actually see what good work is being done without having to be there. And then you can add in your sort of congratulations on top of that as well. And so this sort of replicates what was available to people to do before hybrid working became such a big part of the working environment. So, and it obviously is a really important thing because we're all dealing with humans here. We're dealing with people, and recognition of hard work or of doing something is a sort of a fundamental human need. And it can fall between a few stools in this new hybrid working, remote working environment that we have.
Yeah, it definitely is fundamental. Like even something from when you're first in school in kindergarten or childhood nursery, getting your gold star for doing something well. We all still want that even as we get older.
That's true. That's true.
So yeah, to summarize, what you're saying is there isn't really one set in stone way to measure engagement.
No, but it's worth putting a bit of effort into trying to measure it in any case, and having a standard for it that you can measure in the future and track it in your own organization because of the importance of getting it right and increasing your engagement scores, as we've seen before.
Yeah, so there's a multitude of ways that we can measure it. Some great engagement from you guys in the chat here as well. Keep sending any questions. If you guys have anything, we're going to get to them at the end. We'll have some time to answer a few questions too. If you have any more questions afterwards or you're thinking about it, you can always DM me on LinkedIn or Gary. You can send us an email if you'd like. We'd love to give you a demo on our employee recognition software that can help boost your employee engagement. We also have lots of guides and ebooks available on our website, or if there's one topic you're interested in that you can't find on the website, just message one of us and we can send it on to you. So the big question, part 3, how can you improve employee engagement? How do we tackle this? How can you improve employee engagements? Through our professional research, we're going to walk you through our findings of the top 7 most effective ways to increase employee engagement. Starting with number 1, make compensation fair. And I don't just mean a bigger salary. Studies show actually it's more about equity. The metrics actually show that what really matters to employees is feeling like you're paid fairly in relation to your colleagues. Some stats on that, you can find these studies in our ebooks. 82% of workers said they felt more productive and satisfied with their work when they believed that they were paid fairly. Makes sense. So number 1 is make compensation fair. Number 2, we touched on this a little bit earlier, offer flexibility. For some, flexibility is actually as important as compensation. The feeling of having autonomy over your own schedule and carving out your work-life balance is really important. In the same study mentioned before, when asked about work flexibility, it was actually 94% of respondents that said they benefited from it. So it's a big number.
Yeah, and I think there's lots of studies that, I think that whole hybrid working model is here to stay. It's becoming embedded. It's the metrics around it in terms of the number of days in the office, number of days outside of the office is sort of coalescing around 2 to 3 either way. And it is something that employees really value and get quite engaged with and emotional about.
Yeah.
And people do say that they would and will move jobs or companies if the flexibility isn't there. So that's a really important one to engage people with. And it's something that companies do need to do in a competitive labor market like we have now. It's something that whether a company agrees or disagrees and our mandates return to office, etc., it is part of the competitive landscape for people recruitment and retention. And so you've got to, especially if you're in a smaller company, it's something that you might be able to offer more flexibility than some larger organizations. And in that is a way of competing with some of the larger enterprises that maybe are paying more salary. So it's something that's really, really important to consider and get right, whatever you decide to do as a company at the end of the day.
Yeah. There's actually in The Guardian this morning, I was reading, there's a study that just was done because there's quite a few companies in the UK turning to office full-time, and all the people that were working hybrid, not all of them, there was a high percentage were just saying that even talking about going back to the office full-time was causing them mental stress in their job. So it is very important to some people to be able to have flexible time off. But I do think that, like as you mentioned earlier, the spontaneous interactions and the collaboration that you get from all being in the office can be lessened with it. So it's just really important that we keep good communication, and that's actually what we're moving on to. So number 2 is to offer flexibility. Number 3 is to improve your communication. So especially with all that, it's a lot more than just having like a quick check-in or hopping on a quick call with someone just to check a box. I think there needs to be empathy in your communication, needs to have meaning behind it. You need to actively listen to your colleagues, to the people working with you, to your bosses even. Sometimes they need to say some things to you. It's not just a box-ticking exercise. So he said, employees feel more engaged when they feel heard and understood. That's for sure. It's important to schedule one-on-one meetings, small group meetings even. Yeah. Especially for people that work hybrid.
Absolutely, and we're in an age where there's so much information overload. Everybody's bombarded with information, and yet communication is not improving. In fact, it's arguably communication is a huge challenge, which is weird in this world where we're all hyper connected through digital connectivity. So it is an interesting area. And some of it definitely goes back to this human interaction, and how to generate that. So I'm amazed still, a few years out from COVID, how few of our clients want to meet us face to face. It's sort of like they just don't want to do that anymore. It's too difficult to organize maybe in their office. They just don't want to do it. We had a meeting with a client last week. I was really shocked. It was the first time in a year I think I probably sat down with someone. So communication has changed, and not all of it for the better, and so HR in particular needs to come up with some creative ways of maybe getting people together and of getting communication flowing in both directions, of getting personal communication going, and not relying on the old one-way digital email type communication to spread the messages throughout the company, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's really important as well to like celebrate the wins in the company, just to share updates, things that have gone well in the past, so that keep kind of everybody connected in that sort of way. Keeps it alive, even if you're not in the same room. Being seen and heard is important. So that's number 3. Improve your communication. We can always do better with that. Number 4 is encourage wellness. So employers investing in wellness shows that the team is cared for beyond just the work that they do for the company or for the employer. We like to focus on all 3. Physical, emotional, and financial well-being is really important too. It leads to higher motivation and loyalty, and then also engagement, of course. And it doesn't have to just be the boring old kind of things we did. You can be really creative with it too. There's lots of stuff online. We actually have a wellness program here within our company, and it really helps with team bonding. I think we have a lot of fun with the stuff we do. We've had some stress management classes, mindfulness, even laughter yoga, which was really fun. And also one of our clients, I don't know if you know this yet, but they were talking to me recently. They did a mental health awareness week. They encouraged people to talk about the elephant in the room. That's what they made kind of their slogan for it. And on the day that the week started, they actually imported a life-size fake elephant. It was brought onto the site, and like I actually got on a call with one of them right after they brought the elephant in, and everybody was laughing and talking, and you could just tell that it really made like the morale boost a lot. And it's a good idea. So
it's funny, like you should say that as well. Like that wellness is changing, I think, as well. It's sort of a little bit like hybrid working. It's becoming a thing that I think before it was all about just having a gym or on site, or having one yoga session. It was a bit airy fairy. Now it's becoming actually more interesting and more practical. As more people openly talk about mental health issues and the need for work-life balance. It's an interesting thing. I think in society it's just become more acceptable to talk about these things. And so wellness has changed in companies because of that as well. So you don't have to overdo it as a company, but you just sort of need to encourage it, if that makes sense. Because wellness is also obviously a very personal thing to people. We don't see many, like for example, a few years ago, I remember people talking about, well, could we do an incentive for our employees where their Fitbit scores goes into some sort of central database and we can get points out. Exactly. And so, that never really took off, right? So because there's a line you can cross. But then companies do these really interesting and good wellness initiatives that sort of just hit the right mark without overstepping the line in terms of what's personal. So I think companies are getting, some companies are doing a really good job here. And like I said, you don't have to overdo it. You just have to do a couple of things to encourage it.
So we don't all have to have an elephant in the room all the time. And
or go to laughter yoga. We're happy about that. And so is everybody else.
Okay, so that was number 4, encourage wellness. I'm going to let you take the next few, Gary. Number 5, use leadership to engage.
Yes, I think leadership really has a strong role to play in employee engagement. We see this on the programs that we launch as well. The most successful employee recognition engagement programs that are launched have strong leadership buy-in, which means that the upper echelons are not just signing it off and then walking away. They're actually actively participating in the program. They're actually sending out rewards. They're leading by example, and that's really important for the visibility and for everyone else to buy in, because leaders are there to lead, right? And for employees, that's part of this whole idea of trusting their leadership, because trust is a really important thing. Employees who strongly agree that they trust the leadership of their organization are 4 times more likely to be engaged and 60% less likely to be looking to move companies. So trust in their leadership is a really strong thing. But it's not just trust as in like, oh, this company's going to make tons of more money next year. It's more to do with leaders who are employees who respect their leaders for what they do, how they do it, and for the empathy that they sort of show, and how good they are bringing people along with them to do it. So it's more about the culture they generate as well, rather than just leaders of the business. As you know, these are the leaders of the people and how they lead people. So getting leadership to engage on programs that are aimed at employee engagement are really important, and just all to do with communication as well. Leaders that can are stronger communicators and that work with HR to get the message across in maybe some personal ways, or are there visible for their people. Really, really important.
Yeah.
Secondly, develop a recognition culture. So if we go back to the definition of engagement as being all about discretionary effort, then it's obvious that if an employee is recognized, thanked, appreciated, acknowledged for these extra efforts, then they're far more likely to continue to put that into effect. And we see this all the time on the sort of recognition programs that we run. So what happens is that people are peer recognizing other people in the company, and when they do that, they have to nominate the person and select one of the company values that they have displayed or lived up to in their achievement or their task that they're being rewarded for. And then other people, through social recognition, can see who was recognized, why they were recognized, the value that they exhibited, and they can also then add in their congratulations, or they can add a comment in or add a boost in onto that as well. So over time, this culture of recognition can develop throughout the company, all based on the company's values, which is what connects the company with the employee in terms of the alignment of goals and objectives. And for recognition to work that way, for a recognition culture to develop in a company, the recognition itself, it's important that the recognition has a number of elements to it. Right? It needs to be timely, it needs to be genuine, it needs to be personal, it needs to be equitable. So if you think timely, it's not really good enough anymore to thank someone for being 10 years in the company 6 months after the event.
Yeah.
It's not really good enough anymore to send a pre-printed generic thank you card to somebody that's achieved some huge feat. It's not really good enough anymore to say, to give everybody in the company the same hamper.
Yeah.
It's not really personal, right? I don't drink alcohol. I don't, whatever. I don't eat chocolate. You know what I mean? And equitable. This is the one that really gets people. It's not good enough anymore to be seen to recognize one person and failing to recognize somebody else. That doesn't mean that everybody has to get the same thing, but it just has to be seen to be fair. So if you put a system in place, we've seen so many companies do this in the past, where they have put a recognition program in place to engage with their staff, but they manage it in-house and it gets a little bit too big and unwieldy. And then certainly suddenly some people get recognized, or somebody in a particular department or with a particular manager is getting recognized all the time. But over here on the right is this, an equal set of colleagues who never seem to get recognized, even though they would perceive themselves as working as hard. And then it becomes a negative, something that is, you set out to have as a positive for engagement in a company ends up being a negative and turning people off. And that's a disaster because we spend money on it as well. So it needs to be, there's a consistency and there's a standard for implementing recognition in a way that's effective, and it's going to change both the culture and the engagement levels in your company. And it's just important to get that right. And that is where sometimes in larger companies with 100+ employees, say it is important to have a proper professional platform in place in order to manage that recognition by and large.
Yeah. So we've actually seen that with our own employees recognition. Our recognition hub delivers an average of 90% or more employee engagement each year. So that means that actually 9 out of 10 employees were actively engaged in the program by nominating and recognizing their peers. And by the end of 2024, we actually had a few companies that were at 100%. So it's a big deal, huge deal. So that was number 6, develop a recognition culture. Number 7, engagement management.
Yeah, so I spoke a little bit before about
Yeah.
the challenges that hybrid working is presenting to maybe managers, middle managers, people managers in general. And it's true, like middle managers and supervisors, that level of team leaders have a disproportionate bearing on engagement within their teams. And studies have shown that the recognition that comes from your direct manager is more powerful than recognition you might get from the CEO or from your manager's manager, because the person who's nearest to the task that you're doing every day is the person that you value the most in terms of getting positive feedback or just getting appreciation for that work. They're the people that employees expect will give them recognition. Now the problem is, apart from the whole hybrid scenario, is that middle managers are also quite busy a lot of the time and are trying to run around doing other things, don't always have the time to stop and notice all the good work that's been done, even if they are present when that good work is being done. And then, some are better than others at interpersonal skills, right? And at giving that positive feedback.
Yeah.
So all of these things combined means that it's really important, and sometimes it gets ignored when it comes to trying to develop recognition or engagement in a company. And so, that's where you can put systems in place, you can put tools in place to make it easier for managers in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, we have one of the features in our recognition hub is that the line manager of any employee that's nominated or awarded, they get notified by email. So I've noticed that this actually does help for what you're talking about. So maybe some managers are a little less comfortable nominating for any reason. They don't really know how to say it. They're less personable. They can see other people, their colleagues nominating them, and they can give them their congratulations. They can even boost it. So
yeah,
I do find that helps.
Absolutely. As a manager myself, I love that boost feature where I can just go in and see all the peer nominations that are being made. And if I see ones that are particularly good, that I think are really good, that I haven't noticed myself, I can just click the boost button, give them it's a €5 reward for boost in our company, but it could be anything depending on the program and the client. But I can do a quick boost, and I add in not just my sort of comment, but I'm adding in like here's a pint. Well, depends where you go for a pint, but here's a small thumbs up that get from me too. Like, and I feel that's a really good way to keep vibrancy there, but also as a manager, it's a really efficient way of me to give recognition to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I'm just going to recap our 7 ways to increase employee engagement. Again, if you want us to send you an ebook that highlights these, if you have any questions about them, just do let us know in questions. So number 1, make compensation fair. 2, offer flexibility. 3, improve communication. 4, encourage wellness. 5, use leadership to engage. 6, develop a recognition culture. And 7, engage middle management. So I'm just going to give you one more example of one of our clients that I think uses all 7 of these really well. Shivas Brothers is one of our clients, and they are really engaged on their platform and within their company as well. They are a large program, and they're actually spread over many sites across the UK. They have nearly 2,000 employees. Some of these sites only have a few people in it, and 100% of the sites have engagement in them. So it's really impressive to me. By the end of 2024, they were one of the ones that had 100% nomination rate. A few examples of what they do: they offer an extensive employee assistance program. It focuses on health and well-being support, flexi time, and paid volunteer days off. Extra bonuses for achievements in personal lives like birth and marriage. So like it's not just work related; it's things that are important to you. They offer graduate programs that support recent graduates, and I just think that they're a really great example. Not sponsored by them, but I just to give a good example of a company that does follow all 7 of those. So we're going to get to your questions shortly. If you have any more at all, just pop them in the chat and we'll get to them. Again, remember, if you do want to know more about how Amplify works and how we can help you boost, send us a DM on here. You can do it now, or if you think about something later, just send it on LinkedIn and we can get over to you. So I'm going to ask some questions we have in here. Helen, could you give more details on how the Recognition Hub works in a hybrid or shift-based environment?
Do you want me to say? Yeah, well, I could talk about Recognition Hub all day. So Recognition Hub is our product. It's a points-based system that combines a peer recognition with manager rewards and social recognition, all in a really configurable way. So the best. I mean, it's desktop and it's a mobile app. I think the app is really important. So each one of our clients gets their own program that's branded up for them. They set the rules. They can decide how many what a budget to give to employees and to managers every month or every quarter to reward employees with. You can go on there. You can select an employee if you see them doing something good that's going beyond. Select a company value, put in a short explanation as to why they get rewarded. Select a reward from one of the tiered rewards. So it's like, gold, silver, and bronze type points rewards, and you can send that off. They'll get emailed with it. Their points get added to their total. Everybody else, if you're using social recognition, then everybody else in their team can see the recognition, see what they got in a sort of a timeline, a sort of a Facebooky timeline, and then people can view, like, comment on the recognition that's there. They can even boost it as well. And then things like service awards can be automated and layered on top, so they just get automatically sent, and then people can see those as well and add in their congratulations. Same with birthday rewards, team rewards can be uploaded. So it's a full platform to basically manage all of this recognition in a way that's really engaging, really user friendly, and allows consistent and seamless recognition across your organization, regardless of location, regardless of whether there's remote or hybrid working going on, and regardless of whether there's shift-based work going on, because you can see all of the recognition in one place on a social timeline. So yeah, it's a really sort of powerful way of effective recognition is what I would say. It doesn't leave any gaps, which is what you want.
And I found it really helpful, because as I say, we run this, but we also have one, we use it for us in Amplify as well. And with the app, I find it really good because you can choose to, you don't have to, but you can choose to have your notifications turned on for it. So I just find it really nice, the same sort of sense you get with any kind of social recognition app. When you see the little notification on it, it kind of gives you a little bit of happiness. It makes you want to open it up while you're there. So it can be fun as well. So I find it, the app is a really good addition to it as well.
Yeah.
Okay, we have Emily. Hello, Emily. She says, how long does it typically take to see engagement improvements once a program like Amplify is introduced?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And it sort of depends a little bit on the type of program, because the platform itself is very flexible that we have. And so it really depends on what way it's going to be used in the company. But what we see typically is if a company does this right, there's a huge big bounce immediately on launch. If you launch a new initiative around engagement and around recognition, you'll straight away get a great bounce, like a 30-40% employee engagement bounce with a new incentive program like that, or new recognition program. And then over the coming, I would say, depending on which way it's structured, 2 to 3 months, you'll see an improvement, a sort of constant upward curve of engagement with the program, and that will carry all the way through normally to the end of the year. But the first launch is really important. The first few months is really important. You'll see improvement straight away, and then you'll see a sort of a more gradual then increase as the year goes on. And like Megan said, typically then by the end of 12 months, you're going to have 90% plus engagement with the recognition program if it's done right.
Yeah. We have Jane as well. How do you maintain a sense of connection for remote workers while still offering flexibility?
Yeah, that's the real nut that everybody's trying to crack, I guess, isn't it? And for me, there's no silver bullet. There's no one size fits all here. The couple of things I mentioned that I find important are one, that that there is flexibility. But I would say there's great tools out there for communication now. So making full use of the latest communication tools and sort of getting rid of stuff, communication tools that are not that are maybe a little bit older or not fit for purpose anymore, is really good. So you know, having really good daily communication tools or tool that's there. There's a lot of good stuff happening with intranet and with chat and different things like that. I think that's really important to be using those. I do think that leadership has a huge role to play in having regular sort of town halls or more one-off event type communication, so that remote workers can sort of dial into it and get a sense of what's happening in the company from the very top. I think that's also really important as well. And I think the third area to look at is personalization. Even if you have remote workers or hybrid workers, you've got to figure out ways or excuses or socials or something to get people on site. Maybe obviously not as regularly as when everybody was working in the office. And if it's really difficult to do, maybe it's an annual event or something, but there has to be some way of getting a load of people together in a social setting, in a personal setting. And I think that takes a huge amount of effort these days, much more than it did before when people were just in the office. But it's well worth doing, because more than anything, you want to sort of be able to create this personal connection with people, and you can really only do that to the max when you get people in the same room. So, you know, there's lots of ways of doing it. In fact, I was talking to a client the other day, and they told me that their summer bowling league is actually one of the most engaging things they do every year. And like, you would have thought, bowling, is that not a little bit like Big Lebowski? You know, it's a little bit 1990s. And they were going, this is they have the bowling alley near to where their office was, and they got people in, and this thing became, grew legs, and it was a huge success. So it doesn't have to be grandiose, it doesn't have to be big scale, but I think the key is getting people together in a personal way. Maybe it's only over a few months in the summer like this, or maybe it's one big event a year, or maybe it's one something every quarter. But got to think about how to do that, because that's what used to happen all the time, just because in the normal course of events, and now it doesn't happen at all unless you really plan it.
I also think having like little things that are necessarily 100% work related, like having some fun things, can also bring people in as well. Like I have a friend whose company, they do an app called Music League, and they have different categories, and once a week everybody has to choose a song that is something, a category, and people vote on it. So it can be kind of a cute way to get people like, happy and talking to each other, and then that'll lead them to be more engaged in work as well, I think. So yeah. Fun things like that.
Yeah, we should do that. Sounds very cost efficient as well.
I've actually been meaning to suggest it to you for a while, but we'll see on our next webinar, we'll be able to give you the feedback on how it works. Hopefully. Okay, I don't think there's any more questions at the moment. Again, if anybody wants to send one in after, there's something you've been mulling over while we're talking, you can send us a DM here. You can visit the website, and if there's any ebooks as well that you can't find on the website, you can always send us a message. And I think that's it. Thank you. Did you have anything else?
No, just to say thank you very much, and I hope everybody has a lovely summer.
Yeah, the weather is good. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.